Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mr. Productivity Podcast. Hey, hop on over to my website when you get a chance, MrProductivity.com, M-I-S-T-E-R, MrProductivity.com. Well, today we are joined by Dr. Karen Jacobson. Sometimes people call her Karen or Dr. J. She is the CEO of Aligned Leadership Academy and a human potential expert. Dr. Jacobson specializes in cultivating high-performance teams and challenging leaders to maximize their potential, offering customized solutions to amplify human capital in the workplace. Dr. J. Karen, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Wow, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. And what'd you think about the introduction?
You know what? I don't even know who that person is. No, just kidding. You know what? Titles are titles. Titles to me, they don't mean much. It's really, what do we do and how do we help people? And I think that's what we're going to focus on over the next hour. And we'll bring some juicy tips that people can take and implement and, walk away with actionable takeaways. That's what I love doing.
The reason why I asked you what you thought about the introduction is because I went to your LinkedIn profile and I copied your headline and your summary and I plugged it in the Claude AI, my preferred AI. And they said, hey, give me a 1 to 3 sentence introduction for this guest. And I think it's been doing a really good job in my last couple guests because this way I don't have to, worry about coming up with something. And it's not too long, but it tells people who you are. So good job, Claude AI.
Well, I was going to say, and that's really cool because if you're talking about productivity, the ideas of being able to use AI to speed up our process. I just delivered something last week. And I happened to use Perplexity and ChatGPT the 4.0 in order to create a presentation. And I used ChatGPT with DALL-E in order to create slides, which I thought was really unique because it was slides that they all had to have the same theme with the same colors and really focus on a very specific topic that is hard to get on the outside. As I was doing a strategic planning event for a company and they were in construction and I wanted a construction theme for the strategic planning event. So it was cool. And yet, some of those slides I had to do 4 or 5 times because they couldn't spell.
Well, AI also has a problem counting. So I will take, when we're done with this episode, more specifically, my wife will take the transcript and then she'll tell it to create a less than 280 character post for X when I post the video there. And it'll give me 300, 325. And I'm like, it's too long. Can't you count? So AI does this great job, but apparently it can't count how many characters you want. So I will tell you one of the things I really appreciate about AI is I used to hate coming up with titles for my podcast episode. Now my wife takes the transcript, throws in the AI and says, it'll analyze the entire transcript and come up with a awesome title. So I don't know what the title's going to be, but I know AI is going to come up with a much better title than I could have.
And here's the cool thing, because I'm sure you've probably had several programs that talked about AI and productivity and using it as a helper. It's not a replacement. It's not going to write my book. It's going to help me with certain ideas and maybe with a certain layout that I put myself into and use. But it really does shorten the process. Because if we think about, especially older generations, like we would do research, we'd have to go to the library. So it's like
the card catalog.
Yeah. And it's like, like, does mom have the car today that she can take me to the library so I can go to the librarian and have her pull out the Dewey Decimal System and find me the encyclopedias that I need? And I'm sitting there with all these books and doing the research. And you can ask the same question. You can ask Claude. You can ask Perplexity. You can ask ChatGPT. Whichever one you choose to use, they all have answers. Sometimes use 2 of them because they have different answers, but they'll pull resources if you ask them the right questions. And
I think because I used to go to the library, both public library and school library, I think that's why I'm a book smeller. I love smelling physical books, whether they're brand new, that's got its own unique smell, And oh, you too. Awesome. Okay. So, I mean, book smellers are us. I love smelling books. Older books, you go in these old bookstores. Oh, it takes me back to the day.
Yeah, I literally have back on that shelf a book from, I don't know if you mentioned that. I grew up overseas. I grew up in Israel, and I was there from age 6 to 21. And when I was 12, my mom had given me a book by a European author. It was called The Heart. And it was a book that she got when she was 12.
Wow.
And so do you remember when we were kids and they used to have like your notebooks, you had notebooks and you had these covers that you would put on notebooks so that they don't get torn? I have one of those covers that I covered the book with and still have it in there to protect it because
wow.
Let's just put it this way. My mom passed a couple of years ago at age 93. So just imagine how old that book is. That was given to her 80 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think when it comes to return on investment, you can't beat books. I mean, imagine if like one of my favorite authors is Robin Sharma. He wrote the 5 a.m. Club. That's why I get up at 5 a.m. Imagine that if I got on a Zoom call with Robin and he read that book to me, it would be more than $20 I paid for it. So I think books are awesome, but here's the key to books. And I'd like to know if you agree with me or disagree. If you buy a book, you read a book, and you don't implement what you've learned, you've wasted your time and your money. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, but it depends on the book. Because there's going to be books, of course, that are there for our enjoyment. So that depends on what we're reading. If I'm using something to learn about a country and learn their customs and habits, and I'm going to go visit that country, I better implement that when I'm going to that country. And I better make sure that, I know how to shake hands. I know what hand gestures not to do. I know what to say, what not to say. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with reading a good mystery.
I guess I should rephrase that and going forward and say, if you buy a nonfiction, like personal development book, and you read it and don't apply it, you waste your time and money. So thank you for the correction because it does make a difference. I love reading novels, but I read them because enjoyment.
Yes.
I'm not looking to get anything actionable out of it.
Yeah. And the thing is that while you're doing that, depending on what you're reading, that's still going to enrich you. Because if you're reading, like I used to, growing up, I was the kid that would hide a flashlight under the blanket so that I can read after lights were out. And most of the time I did not get caught, but there were a few times. But the point was that I just devoured books. And one of the areas that I really loved was historical books. Knights of the Round Table and Ivanhoe and I mean, all of these stories. Now they taught history in them and I got knowledge from them, but there was just so much richness and so much joy in reading those books, which, funny years later carrying me now to what I do, whether it was writing a book or whether it's reading other books, being able to take and sometimes I say, I just walk in and a book will just jump at me. Like literally off the shelf, like Karen, buy me. And sometimes I don't need to go page by page and really do everything. But if I can grab some ideas that will enrich me and help me moving forward, that's a win.
It's ironic because you and I are polar opposites. I hated reading when I was a youngster. I hated reading through high school and college. It took me getting fired in 2005 because I realized coaches and courses and conferences were expensive, but I got to buy a book for $20. And so once I got fired, I became an avid reader. Now I have a non-negotiable. I read at least an hour every day, 7 days a week, no excuses. And I read, about half the time I read a print book. The other half the time is my Kindle. Like right now I'm reading a book. Well, I'm reading 2 books on my Kindle right now. One is called Good Energy because, like I said, I'm 59. It's all about longevity. It's about taking care of myself. And Good Energy is all about taking care of yourself. And I'm reading Walter Isaacson's book on Benjamin Franklin, which is fascinating too. And then I have some print books I read. So I'm like addicted to reading. And I know that you're a human potential expert. And I got to believe that one of the keys of being the best human being you can be is not be sedentary, not become complacent, but you have the spirit of, I got to learn something every day so I keep moving the needle toward my goals.
And what you're defining basically is growth mindset. And in order to be productive and really be able to advance. And here's an interesting thing, by the way. One of the companies that I'm working with their executive team, they were talking about progress the other day. And we're talking about people that might want to move up the ladder. And there's different ways to move up the ladder. You could work on your core skills and on your knowledge. And they happen to be a power company. And so they have people that are working as engineers on how to enhance their skill sets, better problem solving as engineers, but may not want to move into leadership position. Then there's that growth on the other side, which can be into the leadership and management. And for both, you really need to enrich yourself and be able to read both things. Now, the other aspect is if you're reading, the more you're reading, not only you're expanding your knowledge so that you can learn things, become more productive, but you're enriching your vocabulary. And what you're doing is you're stimulating your brain. And the aspect of stimulating your brain and building new neuronal pathways allows you to be able to enhance your productivity on a regular basis. You know, there's certain things, whether it's learning how to read or do speed reading, whether it's learning how to learn. And what I mean by that is if you're learning a new subject, a new topic, how do you become more productive and how do you learn to extract the things that you need from that book that you're talking about or from that course that you have? You know, do you have a system that will help your brain absorb and retain the information so that later on you can access it? Because the faster you can access, you become more productive.
Let me ask you this. This is a question I've been tossing around for the last couple of years. Someone's weaknesses. Do you believe we should work on our weaknesses or do you think we should outsource them instead? Because I've talked to several people. I've asked several people this question. About half the people say work on them. Then the other people say, no, focus on your strengths and outsource the weaknesses. What say you?
I say it depends. And what I mean by that is depending on the position, because I love that because you're just hitting on on another question that was asked with one of my companies at a coaching session for the executive team the other day. We had a strategy session and that specific question came up. Now, let's say you have somebody that is looking to grow in their position and they are weak in certain skill sets. Now, weak in certain skill sets, sometimes it can be the technical skill set, sometimes it can be the human skill sets. If you're weak in your technical skill sets and you're looking to advance and progress, you need additional training. And that, because not gaining that could prevent you from moving forward. So a lot of it depends on what your personal goals are as an individual. Hey, if you're happy, just, you know what? I just want to do my job. Just leave me here. I want to keep my head down and I don't want to grow. I don't want to advance. Just work to your strengths. But if you're looking to say, like, in order for me to get to the next level, here are some things that I need without a doubt, then you work on those. Now, by the same token, there's certain weaknesses that you don't touch, you outsource. Look, I cannot type for the life of me. And the administrative work, even honestly, even writing a social media post is like, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me because I'm actually better off. I found ways around it to be more productive by dictating as opposed to typing. And so number one, find your workarounds And one of them can be, I need to do this, and because I'm right out here and I want a live post and I want to post something, then do it and find a workaround. If it's something that I can outsource, by all means, outsource, because sometimes those skill sets that are your weaknesses, number one, they're going to take more time. And number two, they may not be the things that at work are going to bring the high dollars. So am I going to work on a weakness of mine, which is typing, that I can outsource to somebody, instead of having a conversation with a potential client that would take half the time of typing something, which for me as a business owner is a money-making or a potential money-making task. I'm going to do that and I'm going to outsource the other because it's still going to be done. And whatever I'm going to close here is going to funnel to allow me to continue to grow. Because if not, and I'm focused and wasting time with my weaknesses, I'm stunting the growth of my organization.
That's so powerful. And when I became a solopreneur in 2005, I did everything. And about a year ago, my wife quit her job and now she works with me in the business. We have narrowed down what I should be doing: content creation, relationship building, and coaching people. So when I finish this podcast with you, I hand it off to her and she does everything else, because that's not what I like to do. I could do it if I have to do it. If she got abducted by aliens, I could do it. But this, number one, it frees me up to do what I'm really good at. Number two, it prevents me from doing the easy stuff. See, producing a podcast, it's like easy stuff for me, but I'm not really doing the work that's going to move the needle toward my goals. So we have this agreement. If I want something changed in the website, I task it to her. If I want, this program, I want to learn this new program, instead of me learning how to use the program, then she'll learn how to use it, because most things I don't have to touch because I am the brand. I am the content creator. Now, if you're a solopreneur and you're not making any money, okay, you might not be able to do this now. But when you get to a point, then maybe you go out and get a VA or go get a family member so they can do these things that you write SOPs for. You hand it off to them and you focus on what's really going to move the needle for you. And for me, it was so challenging to let this stuff go, but I was not really good at it. And I think whether you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, you're a leader, sometimes you got to let things go. Let's say you got to do a spreadsheet every week for whatever, your boss, but you hate spreadsheets. Well, maybe Sally down the hall, she dreams of spreadsheets. So you go tell her, this is what I need to do. And I promise you'll probably get a report back, looks way better than you could ever do. And it'll be less stress for you.
So you tapped in directly into the topic of the art of delegation and the aspect of delegation. And yes, by the way, everyone that's starting a business and they're solopreneurs will come across the same issues. And the aspect, I'm sure it's probably been something that you've talked on the show about time blocking and making sure that you organize your schedule. But how do you know what to delegate? How do you know when to delegate? And when you feel that there's certain things that are starting to fall by the wayside and you're starting to get like, okay, I'm working 12, 13 hours a day and I'm still not done. Now, by the way, your work is never going to be done, especially if you're looking to grow. But when you're getting to a point where you're looking at, do I do this or do I do that? Because I don't have as many hours a day. And if you're working in an organization and the organization is growing, you could potentially come across the same exact things. So the first thing to do would be to make a list of everything that you are responsible for doing or that you have to do right now. And then there's a column. The next column is, can I delegate? Yes or no? So there are going to be certain things that only you can do to help your business grow. But there are definitely things that other people can do. And usually I would start by delegating the things that just cause you agita. That just, it's like, it's not necessarily keeping me up at night that, that I have to go and do a strategic planning for a new client. It's the fact that I haven't documented something on a report and I have to type 3 pages. That's what's going to keep me up at night. So what do I?
Now, I want to interject here just for a second, because keen listeners of the show are going to go, wait a minute. That sounds like Mark's O-Day method. And you're right, if you've listened to the show before. So I teach something called the O-Day method: outsource, delegate, automate, and eliminate. And what it is for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, the number of days is not magical, write down like 90% of what you do. Then you gift yourself 60 to 90 minutes. You sit down and go through the list 4 times. Don't try to shortcut it. Go through the list once. What of these things can I outsource? Go through it again. Which of these things can I delegate? Go through it again. Which of these things can be automated? It's 2024. You may be able to delegate a significant portion. And the last time you go through, what can be eliminated? Because a lot of people are doing things and they don't even know why. Then you actually start outsourcing the things you identified to be outsourced or delegated or automated. And the elimination one, just get rid of them. And if you're afraid of this, stop doing it for a week and see if the world ends. So if you've never heard that before, there you go. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, thank you for your continued support. But what she just described is a version of my O-Day method. You're probably doing things that need to be done, but not by you.
And then the question is, how do you decide, especially if you're looking at a team, how do you decide who you're delegating to? And that has to do with understanding the people and the team that you're working with. I'll share a little story. When I was in the army in Israel, one of the positions I was in in military intelligence in kind of the headquarters, which would be like, synonymous to our Pentagon. And one of the areas that they put me in at the time, because I had the opportunity to be the commander of the unit, to be his secretary. And I was like, yeah, I don't type and I don't make coffee. So that's out. And so they put me in another part of the unit, and they put me in front of a computer, old day computer, DOS system, as for those who might know. And I was given intel to read. I was given all these articles that were talking about, all sorts of activities that were happening when people were crossing the border, and terrorism and all sorts of high level intelligence. And here was my job. By the way, this was a room that had no windows and just a desk with a computer and enough room for me to have the piles of the paper that I had. And I got these sheets that were like horizontal sheets, letter size horizontal, with squares on them, green squares on them. And I had to write the headlines letter by letter into the squares. And then once it was done, I had to walk across the other side to the base to a unit where the keyhole punchers were sitting underground in the basement, so that they can translate that into the cards, punch the cards, and shove it into the mainframe so that all the information was on the computer.
That is old school. I remember those cards, by the way.
Now here's the thing. I lost my mind.
Wonder why.
Now, because even the listeners that have heard us for the last 20 minutes know that one of the first things that I said is, I'm not good in admin. I can't type for the life of me. Sitting in front of a computer, reading and writing headlines and then, proofreading. Yeah, I could find the mistakes, but that's not a job for me, because they never took the time to actually understand my behavior style, or what people might call the personality, which is, a misnomer for that, but my behavior style and my habits and what my strengths were, and that I needed to be in front of people in order to either speak or work or lead, as opposed to sitting and doing admin work. Now, fast forward years later, when I got into understanding human potential, into learning about becoming a professional behavioral expert, those are some of the things that I learned. I wish that back then in the Army, when they gave me one of those jobs, they would have run a test, not just not just an intelligence test that they would, but more of a behavioral test to know how to fit people into the right positions. Now, ultimately, when I left that unit and was moved to another unit, I was given the opportunity. That's when I became a commander, where I had 80 women under my command, and I wore 3 hats. So I had challenges, and I had people, and I had leadership opportunity. Those were right fitting. So as a business owner today, I know those are tasks that I can handle. The ones that I can't handle, I need to look at who is the right person to manage those tasks. And if I'm hiring somebody, I need to know during the interview to ask the right questions to be able to make sure that they can handle the task that I'm going to delegate, because that's going to affect productivity of our entire business.
100%.
So if furthermore, if I hire someone that's just like me, most common business mistake that I have seen in 25 years or so, people hire like, oh, well, you know what? They're like somebody I would hang out with. Wrong. Then if you're doing that, you're hiring somebody who is going to be a copy of you that's not going to be able to handle the tasks that you're not good at.
And that's why my wife makes one heck of a business partner, because she loves doing the things I hate to do and I suck at. And so that's why she will write my newsletter. So I will write the newsletter, and she will take that very rough draft and make it look really nice. She does a great job on the podcast. All this stuff she does because she's very detail oriented, where I'm not. And what's ironic is before I was fired, if you told me I'd eventually be podcasting, be a professional speaker, I would have thought you were bananas. But now here I am, because I realized I tapped into my potential, which was being the front face of an organization, which is mine. And I love the way you explained about the strengths, because I've never heard anybody put it quite that way on the show before. Don't hire someone exactly like you, because you haven't solved the problem. You just multiplied the problem, because now you have 2 people that can't do what needs to get done. And I love how you said that, because people don't understand, if you don't like doing A and you hire yourself, now 2 people don't like doing A.
And that's one of the things, one of the things I do when I work in organizations, I work on benchmarking, is first of all, to understand the position. And rather than so many people that are hiring, like, oh, I'm going to hire because they've got a good personality or they have a good resume, but are they capable of doing the job? Do they have the skill sets and the talents and the persona to match? So in the aspect of benchmarking is we're really creating for a job. We're creating everything from the key accountabilities, which is why we even have the job, to what would be the tasks, what the skill sets are, and what the persona is going to. So we're kind of building that template that if I need 5 new principal engineers, I know that I can duplicate and replicate, because I have that mold of what a principal engineer in this current business is going to look like, which might be different as a principal engineer in another type of business. So we're creating the bench for that, and then using not only the looking at their resume, because let's face it, half of them are doing resumes on ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, which are going to make up stuff. And they're trained and they're coached on how to interview. They're coached on the STAR method, and I mean, they know that. But when it comes to taking that as well as looking at an assessment and really understanding their behavior and their, what we call the DNA, which is their competencies, those are things you really can't fake. So now you have a broader picture to know if that person is going to be the right fit And when you do, especially with the assessments that we use have 3 sciences that give you up to 95% accuracy along with your interview, because you want to make sure, am I looking for culture add, looking for culture fit? How is that going to, look with my organization and help the culture? That's when you get the right people. And that is also helping not only with engagement, but engagement, retention, and productivity.
When you go out and speak to the client, do you see some of the leaders, maybe even the elder leaders, who are more into passing the blame? So in other words, instead of saying, hey, I'm the leader, I hired the wrong people, I didn't look at the core competencies, I didn't look at their coachable, or do they tend to go, you know what?
HR. I think it depends. It depends really on the size of the organization as well.
Okay.
I've worked with organizations that either the general manager, who on a local area was in charge, or the company owner was in charge. But I will say that at a certain point, I have one of my clients that has come to me several years. Like, they've been coming back every year since 2018. And the last year was, hey, Doc, can you come in and instead of me, who I want to be the leader and the visionary of the organization, because he hired great people. He has an awesome, awesome team that he nurtures and trains. And he's a millennial, and has a really thriving company. And, he said, can you train my business manager and my operations manager how to hire? So he'll pass the buck the right way to make sure that the organization has the ability to continue that growth. And at times you'll see, absolutely, the bigger the organization, now it's compartmentalized and they're working in silos. And so HR, that's HR, we don't know what they're doing.
I remember the first time I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say he's the CEO of VaynerX, VaynerMedia, VaynerSports, Vayner, etc. And he said, it's all my fault. I take full responsibility. And people ask him, wait a minute, you didn't hire this guy in this department. The manager hired it, who works for this manager, who works for this VP. He goes, I am at the top of the food chain. Everything's my fault. When the first couple of times I heard him say that, I'm like, this guy's crazy. But then I thought about it. Number one, it's a lot less stress when you take responsibility. You don't have all the BS going on. Whose fault is it? You just take responsibility. But I think if a leader says, hey, listen, if this manager of this department in another city hired someone, I'm still the person at the top. So I'm going to take responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean that the problem doesn't get solved. It just means, hey, the buck stops with me. And I know even today, some leaders, they're at the top, they're untouchable. So everyone beneath them takes all the bullets and they get all the praise. I think if you're going to be a leader, and correct me if you disagree, tell me if you disagree, I think you got to take all the bullets and you got to take all the praise. You can't just say, I'm not going to take the hits, but I'm going to take the praise. Do you agree with that, or am I off base?
Yeah, it really depends. And that gets into a totally different topic. It's basically, what style of leadership do you possess? Because we've got the autocratic leadership, we've got the collaborative leadership, we've got the laissez-faire leadership. It really depends on the type of leader you are, the type of persona you are. I've sat in organizations where a leader takes a back seat because of the fact that they don't want to create hierarchies. However, in doing so, they're somewhat taken away from their own leadership. So the old style of, carrot and stick leadership is not going to work these days. And they're going to be areas where, like, yeah, hey, I'm going to lead by example. One of the things that to me, I always talk about, and that's been one of the things that I grew up with, is the call to action. In the Israeli military, the Israeli Defense Force is follow me. Whereas in other places around the world, it's charge. So follow me is saying, I am leading by example. Yes, I will take the heat if need be. And there's plenty of situations where that's happened. One of the most famous worldwide was in Tebe, where the commander was the one that was killed because he led everyone. So when it's, especially if it's my company that I'm building, maybe today I'm a solopreneur and maybe 7 years from now, I have a team of 100. Hey, I'm responsible because I'm the one that started this. And I hired number 2. I have number 3, number 4. Maybe at a certain point I gave them the opportunity to hire, but did I tell them how? Now,
I remember way back in the day, I used to work for a steel factory way back in the 90s when I went to college. And they used to have this library that you could take books on tape. And I do mean books on tape. There was no Audible. There was no social media. And one of the books I listened to was by Lee Iacocca. And I'll never forget this. He used to park in the Union parking lot, not his reserved parking spot right outside the front door, and walk through the factory. And when I first heard this, who cares? So what? But now I'd like to think I've matured over the years and got a college degree and whatnot. Now I understand how powerful that is. He would know the names of the workers and their kids. That's how you lead. He led from the front, but he didn't think he was better than anyone else. Now, you may not like Lee Iacocca, but that story, after all these years, resonates with me even today.
And that is a perfect example of management by walking around. And one of the things that when I work with organizations, we're looking to create elite alignment, it's got to be from the top down, from the bottom up and across. And so if you don't have that one-on-one interaction, if you don't know who those people are, you don't know your organization.
People have to let that sink in.
Yeah.
There's someone who just heard that has to let that sink in, because my last job that I was fired at, I never forget. That didn't sound right. The last job I had that I was fired at, that sounds better English. I remember there was an old inventory system we were using, and they went out and got a new system, and they didn't go to any of the people that would actually be using the system. They created a committee of all the senior executives who picked the software, and they said, here, we're going to send you a class for 1 hour to learn how to use it, and you better not mess it up. And I'm like, we're all like, what? It was so different. It was like going from English to Mandarin. And because they didn't involve anyone on the front line, us little workers who would use it day in and day out, there was a loss of productivity. And I didn't know it was called productivity back then. I wasn't Mr. Productivity. But now I understand it was a loss of productivity because we're all sitting there going through the knowledge base and trying to find how do you do this and calling health support because we didn't know. Had they involved us, we would have said, wait a minute. The old system had 3 clicks. Now this takes 12 clicks to get the same thing. And the screen's totally laid out. But they didn't know that because they didn't involve the people in the front lines.
And that is basically leadership fragmentation. That is a perfect example of leadership that is not in alignment with what is actually happening, boots on the ground. And when you don't have that, you will come down with new ideas, with new rules, with changes that will hold your organization back or create havoc because you thought it was a great idea, but you didn't look at who's actually implementing and how does that affect their process and does it fit the process? Is it really the best? One of the things that if you're looking at creating any new initiatives and you're looking to bring those initiatives to people that are working at your individual contributors, they have to be part of that task force. They have to be there because of the fact that they have the knowledge and the experience. And in a smart way to do that is also to run a beta test these days before you bring something company wide and affect the productivity.
One of the companies I think does a really poor job at this is my beloved Apple. So I'm all in on Apple, and I'm recording this video with you right now on my MacBook Pro. And someone at Apple decided we're going to determine how many ports you have. And the users say, we want like, say 5. They go, we'll give you 3. I'm like, we told you what we wanted. We wanted A, B, C, D, and E. And they go, no, we know better than you. Now, like I said, I love Apple. I left Microsoft many years ago. But whether you're Apple, Microsoft, Google, YouTube, I don't care. Got to listen to the people. And I think smaller companies do this very well. I think when you're a small business, you tend to listen better. We all know those companies we deal with all the time where you go in there, you have a suggestion. Oh, I got some feedback for you. And all of a sudden, a couple months later, you see it in the app or you see it in the store. Like, wow, they listen. And then we also know those big companies where they have a feedback page and you're like, does anybody even read these?
No.
Things? Because they've lost touch because they're so far removed from their end users.
So one of the organizations that I do, I'm part of a leadership development program for them, and they talk about in the finance arena, and they talk about everything that they do and all their initiatives. They have to understand the customer line of sight. So they've literally, with everything that they do, they create a hierarchy. If I'm an advisor, how many steps to go through until I reach the customer, and what conversations are we having along the way? Well, that might be an aspect of customer service, okay, to make sure that your product is reaching the right hands into the audience, into your audience, your customers. But the same thing has to happen up and down within an organization. And that goes back to what you mentioned before about that leader who's sitting at the helm and sitting with the board of directors, and they're making decisions and, thinking, well, I'm puppeteering people. No, that does not work. Because if you're disconnected from your people, then you're disconnected from the culture. You're also going to eventually create more silos and more rifts within an organization. And the minute you tap into that, and the minute you tap into cultural issues, that becomes more of a toxic environment. Now, without a doubt, you're affecting productivity because people don't have the same level of ownership. They don't have the same level of care. And they don't really care if they do their job. Some of them just come in to check a box.
Very true. And I appreciate you bringing up about the disconnect from people. I am big on LinkedIn, and I'm going through this massive project where I'm DMing like all my connections and building relationships. And I am shocked the number of people who say, I'm Dr. J's DM. And I'm just using an example. I'm like, why do you have a VA doing your DMs? You got like 2 clients, and they want to be bigger. They want to become this bigger juggernaut. And sometimes I'll reach out to this person. I'm just like, Gary Vaynerchuk still answers his own DMs. I think he's bigger than you. And what happens is they're disconnecting themselves. They're not even that big. They may only be like a couple steps ahead of their ideal client, but they're making it seem like I'm this really lofty influencer, this content creator, when in reality, they're only just a little bit ahead of them. And just that small gap, they're already disconnected from the people they're trying to attract. I mean, if I come to you and you have this persona like you're the next Apple or Microsoft, I'm like, no, you're not. I know you. You can't even pay your mortgage. You're not understanding. You're creating that disconnect. You want to draw people to you. You don't want to push people away because some people don't want to do business with big people. They want the little guy. Some people only patronize small businesses. And if you're a small business, but you're like, I got to be a big line of the business world, well, you may be losing a lot of business because you're disconnecting yourself. You're creating a gap that I believe is unnecessary. And I think this applies whether you're in the corporate world or you're building your own small business.
And I would definitely agree when it comes, here's one of the things when it comes to productivity and social media. If I'm going to create some topics and I might create some posts or some idea of post and framework, and I give that and I outsource that to a VA here, get a graphic for this, jazz it up and then post it in different areas. But if there's personal messages, and even if I have somebody reviewing them, because let's face it, everyone is, how many people do you know today that are sending out, just doing keyword searches and sending you messages? Look, I've had people sending me message like, oh, well, your fitness company or your optometry office or talking about my chiropractic and how they can help me. And I'm like, if you've actually read my bio, you would know that 9 years ago, I've stepped away and made a career change. So you might be scraping for words. Those are things that an assistant can read and, do whatever. But by the same token, if you're going to get a personal message, then make sure you answer that. Build relationships. Hey, that's one of the reasons why you and I are back on a podcast again. Because I was like, hey, how many years has it been since we did the podcast? And I think it was like 2017 or 2018. And you were like, Karen, it's time for a new one. I'm a new guy now. I have a different podcast. Like, yeah, sure thing. And so business is developed and gained through relationships. And part of being, I know what people say, well, I don't have time to do. I'm going to call your on that, because if you have time to go and work somewhere, then you make the time to build and nurture the relationship with a company. One of the things that has helped in my business and my clients appreciate is I come in to be, have you heard the term, I'm of this world, not in it, which basically means I'm like you, but I'm coming from the outside. I've had companies that when I've done work with them and I've done like long-term projects, spent a year with them, I got like, hey, Karen, here is our company shirt. And they gave me, or they had different colors. So they made sure that they printed on and embroidered the company logo on purple so I can have it. And I will tell you, the day that I walked in to deliver a training for the senior leadership team and I'm wearing that golf shirt, they were like going nuts. And the thing is that's how you build your business. Like I said, outsource the small things that you're not good at, but create and develop those relationships with people, because that is what helps you become more productive.
100%. And I think when it comes to building relationships, patience is key. I admit I am not a very patient person. I know people who have the patience of Job. I do not. But I realize if I'm going to become successful monetarily or social media wise, whatever, I have to be patient, because you can't make a friend. We're not on the playground in school. Hey, Karen. Oh, you like this truck too? Let's be friends. That in the real world, it takes more than that. And I think a lot of people, they want to hurry things up. Like we all got those DMs where I'll send you a DM and I'll say, hey, John, thanks for being a connection with me on LinkedIn. I really appreciate it. I looked at your profile. Seems like you got a lot of things going on. You're really excited. So what is lighting you up right now? And then John will turn around and send me 6 links in an Ernest Hemingway DM. That's not how you build a relationship. A relationship is first you go to my profile and go, oh, he's got this, this, and this, and we have a conversation. But people want to shortcut these relationships. They want to go from stranger to like, give me money as a client. Well, that doesn't work in the real world. Maybe if you're a drug dealer, it'll work. But for the rest of us, it takes a slow drip of, hey, Karen, how's it going? Oh, great. You on a vacation? How was vacation? Oh, Karen shared a picture of her on vacation. Wow, that's awesome. Then you build that relationship. You can't shortcut that stuff.
Absolutely not. But here's an interesting thing. Isn't it true that you can meet people or connect with people where you just have that instant connection?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And so what ends up happening now, it's going to go back to the different behavior styles. So they're going to be those that are, well, first of all, they're going to be those that are taught, like, here's your recipe for sales, go do it, which is the ones that just do that and send you that junk and like, you know, take LinkedIn and do sales nav and pull out keywords and spam everyone and their mother. You know, you keep on mentioning Gary V, which I love him. He's incredible. He taught me how to take a selfie. But oh yeah, he was here in town years ago and at Infusionsoft. And here's a great example of somebody knows how to adapt to people. Because if anyone on the line knows Gary and knows Gary, how Gary talks, knows that as a New Yorker, he's got a very colorful vocabulary.
Yes, he loves the F word.
Yeah, and not flying or flowers.
Yes.
But the thing was that he was the keynote speaker at Infusionsoft conference here years ago. And they're a company, their background, they're 5 guys, I think, that are, from Utah originally, Mormon. They're, you know, and in order to respect them and what they stood for, he actually kind of gave an opening. He goes, for anyone here that knows me, you're not going to hear my, you know, specific language. And it might sound weird because you know where he's about to just boom, drop an F-bomb. And he doesn't. Mm-hmm. He doesn't. And then after, you know, and I don't know how many people, it was huge because that place was at the Phoenix Convention Center, like huge wow. Audience. And then he stands and for almost an hour and a half to shake hands and take pictures with people. Okay. But, and that's why I said, he was like, we stood there and he goes, let's take a selfie. And he goes, no, you do it this way. So I have a picture and somebody took a picture of us, Gary teaching me how to take a selfie.
That's hysterical.
I was awesome.
You know, but before you go on, I got to tell you this one thing. I just saw a video today. We're recording this on August 19th to let the listener know that this didn't take too long to come out. I saw a video on his Instagram, on his TikTok, where at VCon, he had this little girl, she had been 7 or 8 years old, and she goes, I got a YouTube channel, but I don't know how to edit. And mom doesn't want to know how to edit. And he got down to her level and he says, sweetie, you learn how to do YouTube. You can learn to edit. I believe in you. And she just like, you know, she's brightened up and she gave Gary a hug because he went down to her level and says, you can figure this out. I believe in you. And I tell Gary, I don't care for his colorful language, but I believe in his authenticity. And I also believe in all these people. I'm not going to name these other big wigs. You know, we all know who they are. I could meet Gary at an airport, walk up to him and say hi, and he would not say, oh, excuse me, I'm Gary Vaynerchuk. Who are you, peasant? He loves everybody. Now, we all know those people where if you saw them in public, they like, are you a part of my $100,000 mastermind? Because if you're not, you don't get to come near me. Those people, I don't want to be associated with those people. And I told my wife, if I ever become that kind of a-hole, tell me to stop because I don't want to be that person. I want to be a clean-mouthed Gary Vaynerchuk where people feel like they can approach me because like my late mother used to say, you get more bees with what? Honey than you do with vinegar.
So when you were talking about that connection, one of the things that Gary talks about is being of service. Because he talks in his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. It's about give before you ask. Mm-hmm. And that's about building that relationship. It's about how can I serve you? What do you need? If you're coming out with a book, you know, can I help share it and promote it and help you with your launch? Before you ask. And And that's the nature of any relationship. Even, it's like, let's build something before I hit you with like, hey, I love this one. I love this one. It's like, dear Dr. Karen, I've come across you and I think you're doing some great things. Let's collaborate. I.e., this is a message that came directly from somebody who's either promoting LinkedIn training or, website development or whatever it is that they're selling today. And you could see it because you see, what their title is. Let's collaborate. Like, that's not called collaborate. Let's be honest. What you're saying is, I want your business. I want you to buy from me. I don't know you from a hole in the wall.
Yep. Oh my goodness.
Which by the way, productivity wise, that is the biggest waste of their time.
Yep.
Biggest waste, because what they're doing, is alienating. And most of the time I just, hit delete, never answer. But every once in a while, I'll respond because there's something in that. I just got one that came from one of those assistants that read the DMs or send out email. And it was someone who hired me to speak in 2018 and did a great job for them. I've got video testimonial. And apparently they were the company owner and they're now working for someone and doing some type of sales. And rather than sending a personal message that basically says, hey, it's been a minute, like you did, or that we've seen, they just sent out a blanket message, whether it's their assistant or somebody said, and wanting my business, which was completely out of left field. And I said very nicely, I said, great hearing from you and good luck and congratulations on the new job. By the way, in case you forgot, we actually know each other. We're not just a blind connection on LinkedIn because I spoke. You hired me to speak for your organization in 2018.
Wow.
Never heard back, but that's okay.
Well, that's a good place to end up. And because you gave us a lot to think about on the show today, thank you for sharing that story and the story about Gary Vaynerchuk teaching you how to do a selfie. Before I ask you to tell us where people can find out more, folks, you got to watch the video. If you're listening on Audible, Audible, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Well, if you're on Spotify, you're probably watching the video. Karen's hysterical. Before I ask you where people can go to find out more about you and what you do in the world, you gave us a lot to think about. And so I know it's tough for people when they're listening to podcasts, they're walking the dog, taking a run, riding the bike. They don't have a notepad. So what is one parting thought you want to leave them with? Because typically what people hear at the end is what they really remember. So what is a parting piece of advice you'd like to leave for the listener?
So we talked a lot about productivity and process and people. And we talked about developing relationships with people. So whether you own a company and a solopreneur, or whether you have a team working for you and you're also interacting with people, just remember there's always that human potential, that element behind every process and behind productivity, that if you don't nurture that, you don't have the rest. And you definitely don't become productive or profitable.
Powerful. So where can we go to find out more about you and the dent you're putting in the universe?
As long as it's in the universe, not in my car. I am online, and the easy thing, it's Dr. Karen Jacobson with an S-O-N. So whether it is my website or Facebook or Twitter or X, more correctly, or Instagram. Sorry, no TikTok for me. LinkedIn is primarily the best way if somebody wants to connect and if somebody wants to read some of the stuff that I do. feel free to drop a message to the website or any other area.
Excellent. Well, I am on TikTok, and I don't know how in the world I have almost 1,500 followers. I don't do dancing. I don't do trending sounds. I just go on there and share about productivity tips. Somehow I have almost 1,500 followers. I get comments. I get people saving my videos. I must be doing something right. Because the younger generation is not productive. They need to get my tips. So I'm very thankful that, LinkedIn, as slow as they are to adopting new features, LinkedIn is where it's at. But I try to spread my love everywhere. Karen, I appreciate you being on the show. Before you leave, dear listener, head on over to Karen's website. But when you get down there, head on over to my website, MrProductivity.com, MISTER, MrProductivity.com. Sign up for my free email newsletter. And guess what? You can even get a free call with me. It's all at MrProductivity.com. We'll be back with a new episode real soon. But before then, always remember, stay productive, but stay positive.